Welcome back to Media7. Accusations of carpetbagging have been tossed back and forth since the by-election in Mount Albert was called. But only one candidate has made a virtue of not only not living in the electorate, but having never even visited it. That's Jackson Wood, the editor of the Victoria University student paper Salient. His campaign hasn't exactly been headline news, but his steady stream of press releases has certainly brightened a few days in what seems like a long by-election campaign. In the interests of democracy, Simon Pound volunteered to show Mr Wood around the electorate he seeks to represent.
My name's Jackson Wood. I'm running in the Mount Albert by-election. Hey man, my name's Jackson Wood. Hey, my name's Jackson Wood. I'm running in the Mount Albert by-election.
Jackson James Wood, candidate in the Mount Albert by-election. He's pounding the streets.
Hey mate. Hi there. Hey mate.
So far, the media has largely ignored him. It may have something to do with his being based in Wellington.
This is the first time I've actually been in the electorate. Yeah.
Aha! What does he think of Mount Albert?
It's a nice place. It's not quite as good as Wellington, though. I mean, I wouldn't want to live here.
Most of his campaign is based in Wellington with his campaign manager, Daniel Miles.
We're out hitting the pavement for the first time. Jackson's introducing himself to the people of Wellington.
The bulk of his work so far has existed online, on Facebook, and through inspired press releases. But now he's getting to know the electorate up close with some hits.
Since there isn't any Communist Party rep, then I could vote for you, couldn't I?
And some misses.
Hello, do you want a kiss?
Where's that from? Like you.
This campaign is, of course, a stunt. Jackson is editor of Salient, the Victoria University student magazine.
I think they're pretty pissed off. I've been neglecting my duties. We actually haven't put out a magazine in 6 weeks, and I've been channeling funds from Salient into my campaign.
Student media has a history of social comment and pushed boundaries, and Jackson's campaign is at the clever end of the spectrum.
Student media is a wonderful medium for taking the piss out of pretty much anything. Satire is satire because it takes the underlying meaning of something and expands it, and you get a clearer picture of what's actually happening in a situation if you understand the core tenets of it, which is really important.
Over at the University of Auckland, the student mag Crackham is also stirring the pot. Their latest issue includes nudity. It's a comment on something, maybe simply on causing trouble. Editor Matthew Harnett.
We got into quite a bit of trouble about that, and in fact the trouble is still ongoing, so I can't really go into it too much.
But perhaps that trouble is exactly what student media is there for.
Absolutely, I think so. I think we're here to in part discover how far we can push society and how far society will push back. And I think that's valuable because it teaches not only us, but also everyone who reads student publications or even hears about them a little bit more about themselves and what their core values are.
In the meantime, we'll leave Jackson James Wood with the last word on Mount Albert.
It's a dump. I wouldn't live here.
Simon Pound from the mean streets of Mount Albert in the very bowel of academe. Jackson Wood is actually here with us now, as is former Salient editor, class of 2004, Sarah Barnett, now with The Listener, and Tim Watkin, producer of TVNZ's Q&A, who did his time on both the Massey student mag Chaff and Auckland University's Crackham. Welcome to you all. Now, Jackson, nice day in the electorate, was it?
I didn't really go there. It was... I want to stay in bed, really. I got a bit drunk with Simon last night. Yeah.
You shouldn't say that.
Is that a bad thing?
Probably. But well, seriously, why did you do this? Was it just a bit of fun, or was there a serious point to make? You made a wee speech about satire there.
I think the most important thing for New Zealand as a whole is that we take politics way too seriously. And I saw running in this election, which is obviously quite heated. There's 15 candidates. It's been in the news for ages. And just need to lighten up a bit and make decisions based on information rather than along necessarily party lines or who you think is best, and just learn to laugh at politicians and politicians to laugh at themselves.
You look like you had a lot of fun with those press releases.
Yeah, me and Daniel would sit down generally with a bottle of scotch and write those press releases. Not so good for the productivity, but really good for one's self-esteem. And until the morning after, then you didn't feel so good. But no, that was a lot of fun. And I learned quite a few things writing them, even though we haven't had any mainstream coverage until now. Is this mainstream?
Sort of.
Yeah. It's been a fun ride, and hopefully my retirement from politics when I win the election on June won't put too much of a dampener on it.
I'm very glad to see you not aiming to come second.
No.
Sarah, you were in that chair a few years ago. Did you ever get up to anything like this at Salient?
No, I didn't, and I sort of made a decision that year that I wasn't really interested in it, although had it been something along the lines of what Jackson's doing, I mean, I think Simon's right, that's at the sharp end of where student media can maybe push boundaries. When you look at something like what Crackham's done, I'm less convinced. I think most people already know what their views of, pornography are without Crackham publishing it to provoke that conversation. I don't necessarily know that that sort of thing, particularly coming from a magazine with such a tiny print run as Crackham or Salient or any of them. I was never convinced when I was in the chair that we'd be able to bring, that would be a valuable way to have those conversations.
Tim, you were at Crackham. Why is it always Crackham?
It wasn't always Crackham, to be fair, every now and then. No, but it is often Crackham. I don't know, in a city, big city, Aucklanders just being Aucklanders. Crackham does like to try and push out. The part of the problem, or interest points in this, is that it's the same people of the same age with similar mentalities coming to the same point every time. There is a huge turnover every year. Occasionally people like myself hang around for 2 years, but generally there's a huge turnover. And so somebody gets into a chair in a university in a publication and suddenly goes, here's a clever idea, not realising that everybody a year ago and 2 years ago and 5 years ago has had exactly the same idea. And so you get this incredible repetition of people trying to shock and scandalise in the same way that they've tried to shock and scandalise a few years ago. And so you get, sadly, occasionally someone like Jackson comes along and actually tries something a bit different, so bless him for that. But yeah, often you get, isn't porn shocking? And frankly, it's not. And maybe 50 years ago.
Jackson, what do you make of it? We've all got copies of it. I'm not going to open it to the camera because it's rude.
I wouldn't have done it, but that's only because there's quite a strong feminist movement at Victoria. I think in some respects what they're doing is okay, but on the other hand I also believe that I can see why other people are offended by it. It's just, at the end of the day it's the editor's call. If the editor wants to push that boundary, then good on them for doing so.
And you yourself in Style, although you've presented as the Joker with the Mount Albert thing, I've been reading some of your editorials. You're quite a serious young man at times, aren't you? The latest one was on research and development funding. Yeah,
I truly believe that there's a lot to be reached through what all of us are doing in student media. I'm the president of ASPA at the moment, which is the Aotearoa Student Press Association, and we have so much information that is right at our fingertips that is being passed over by mainstream. And just in our latest issue in the science one that you talked about, we had a piece on can Bill English say tertiary education? He obviously can't, didn't say it during the budget. I did a piece on research and development. In my editorial I put a piece about doing science experiments and just how fun science can be and how fulfilling it is. We're doing a whole education series. My news editor, Michael Oliver, he's gone to great lengths to research how funding has gone through Victoria University, and that's something that ASPA as a whole is now working on, which is fantastic considering. And that's
the point, is that there are different ways to push the boundaries, and you can push news boundaries as much as you can push social taste boundaries. And
you helped set up ASPA, didn't you?
I did. There was a few of us back in the 90s who basically wanted to try and make the most of a resource, which is at that point about 7 tertiary institutions. We were starting with universities. Jackson tells me now there's 14, which is fabulous. That there is similar issues across various campuses, various cities, and you could become a specialty news bureau for education, for tertiary.
Has that happened though?
Not entirely, and that's my disappointment, I guess, from a serious end, is that we really hoped that we could become an NZPA of student news. And, you know, from Dunedin to Auckland, that there could be serious consideration of student funding, of student issues, of how universities are behaving. And these issues can be shared, you know, credible, verified, multi-source stories that go from campus to campus and actually lift the debate.
And Sarah, that was actually something that Salient did. I think, was it the year after you, where the university actually injuncted its own student newspaper?
That was the year after me, yeah.
Was that? Do you think that's the kind of thing that the student press should be pursuing?
I think, absolutely, I think that's where the boundaries should be pushed. I mean, that, to my mind, was where Salient's beat and mandate was. It was to cover the university, it was to cover university students, it was to cover what the Students' Association was doing, and Salient since then has had fantastic mainstream media pickup from the gift of some crazy Students' Association members, and to cover what the university was doing. And I think, you know, that's where student media has its voice and its validity, because they're on the ground, they're in the midst of it, they're affected by it. And that's, and I think since Tim's efforts in setting it up in the last few years, you have seen those stories start to get pick up. So, you know, maybe that dream could still be realised.
Any tertiary institution is a village. It's a small town. You know, we're talking about some thousands of people together, and so there's definitely a role for a community newspaper, basically, which is what student media can be.
I suppose the other side of it is why you get involved. I mean, did both of you are now working journalists? Did you go into it with that intention that it was part of career development?
Yeah. I didn't. I obviously can't speak for Tim. I went into it first, as I think is a common story with people in student media, because a mate of a mate, you know, was involved, and started volunteer writing and sub-editing, and then decided to apply for the job after I'd finished studying and got it. and you know, you could say, yeah. And in a way, you know, that sort of set the course after that, and sort of found myself sticking with it.
Are you going to stick with it, Jackson?
Student media? Hell no. Media in general, I've never actually said that I'm a journalist. I have no current ambition to become a journalist. I like looking at issues and commenting on them. So, I mean, if there's room in there for me to come on this show and work for you at some stage, that would be fantastic.
Well, you look good on camera, I must say. So.
Oh, thank you.
There are a number, if you look around, I mean, you know, Bernard Hickey, Damien Christie, Alan Reid, Lordy, Tom Scott, Bill Ralston, I mean, all these people made their start.
Jeffrey Palmer.
Jonathan Hunt. Huge numbers of mainstream media and political people have had their start there. So it's a great opportunity. I mean, I was just thinking with these guys earlier that by the time I was 22, I'd interviewed 3 prime ministers. You know, I mean, there's huge opportunities there.
Yeah, exactly, and that, I think that's a bit similar to student radio in that sense, and that you get to do things pretty much under your own steam that you would never be allowed to do in a mainstream media grown-up job.
You make decisions. You actually have a budget, and you have a deadline, and you have, and it's the same with radio, whether you're live on air or you're getting a publication out. You have all kinds of commercial pressures to actually play with. Printers and sub-editors and designers and photographers and advertisers. So, yeah, it's a huge learning opportunity.
What are the things that you're proud of that you did at the 2 papers?
Oh, good grief. I rolled one president and almost rolled a second, which is what it's all about, really.
Look, our producer is always telling us how many Australian politicians he rolled.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And look, I mean, you know, 93 in Crackham. Okay, enough from you, young man. Well, you know, there was misspending of money. There was all kinds of stuff, serious journalism, and it was a great opportunity to actually be able to ask hard questions, you know, and actually dig around within the university and the Student Association and at national politics.
Do you two think that Salient has a special character as a consequence of being in the capital? Because it always seems to be the most politically aware of the student papers.
I think partly that's a function of being in the capital, partly I think it's also to do with, I mean, you know, you compare it, it's traditionally been compared with the two magazines from the other two big campuses being Crackham at Auckland and Critic at Otago. And Crackham is a wee bit different because they have voluntary student membership, they have elected editors, so that's always going to have a very different flavour to the other two publications where you've got compulsory student membership and hopefully bigger budgets and appointed editors. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think maybe it is a bit more, possibly more serious-minded, although as has been pointed out, you know, there's still a massive turnover every year, and new editors and new volunteers are going to bring their own flavour to any one year in the magazine's life.
Yeah, just briefly, Jackson, but before we go, you'll be as aware as anyone else that the internet is providing opportunities for the kind of things that student papers used to have to themselves, only they could do it. How is the student press going to hold up when anyone can get online and say these kinds of things?
Well, at the moment, Salient has a really fantastic website, www.salient.org.nz. And it's quite
You're
good.
going into PR,
we got nominated for a Qantas for it, which is quite cool. And we're in the stages with ASPA of actually trying to build an ASPA website so that we can syndicate news through that. It has made it a bit harder. I was talking to Polls 111 class the other day, and how many of you get your information through newspapers? About 2 hands go up. How many people get their information through blogs and online sources? Everyone's hands go up. So it is a challenge. But I mean, by the fact that we have a monopoly on putting press into people's hands on campus, and
we are going to have to go. So good luck with reaching the students and keep doing it. And thank you
Vote
very much.
JJ Wood.
Yes. That brings to an end this discussion. But before we go, here's a look at a significant news anniversary that barely got a look in this week.
In a move that caught even national MPs by surprise, the Prime Minister made the election decision in an hour or so after dinner.
The New Zealand people, if they want me to lead a government, they'll vote accordingly. If they want that other bloke to lead a government, they'll vote for him.
That's about it.
That's it.
That's it.
I think that what the early election will do will save the National Party. It certainly won't save the national government.
What we regard as a good working majority is 15. What we regard as an acceptable majority is 1, and I'll take anything in between.
If you don't want it that way, go the other way.
And Jackson, you've got the T-shirt to match by happy coincidence. Thank you very much for wearing that. We will be marking the 25th anniversary of the 1984 snap election next week with journalists and media minders who were there. Until then, thank you to our panellists, Jackson Wood, Sarah Barnett and Tim Watkin, and to our Bain panel, Martin van Beynen, Bruce Ansley and Jock Anderson. And as ever, thanks to you for watching. Goodbye.